All right. Hello, everyone. I am Andrea McAdow. I am up in the Kingman area and I own Rosebird Farms. We are a small farm and also a food aggregator of regional foods, vegetables, but also value added products and meat. We have a storefront in downtown Kingman here, and we also do some home delivery. So we've been able to collaborate with a lot of people, and grants have been a big part of our business model over the past couple years, especially going into the pandemic. So some of my tips and things to think about when you're writing a grant, it's really important to identify your key partnerships. Um, think about the people you've worked with and who can help contribute to your project, who have a similar mission as you, and you're also serving some of their goals. So think about really trying to write into your narrative about who the project benefits. So other the people in your community. It's really great if you can have some specific demographics and data on those people as well. It's also great if your partners have reach and influence and can help spread information about your project. Certain projects do like to see that you're able to distribute the information that you've learned, so that especially USDA grants, they're funding information so that they can better, you know, our food supply system throughout the country. Another important thing is to identify a need and a niche. So you don't really want to just go in there and just do something because you want to. Important to kind of match up your need with the goals of the grant as well. So yeah, identifying a need in, so for example, in our community, there was a great need for delivery during the pandemic. And so with our LFPP, that was something we were able to address. And there wasn't really home delivery of good food. So that was something we kind of poked at and applied for in that grant. Another thing to consider is how you're going to measure success. So when you're writing the grant, you want to be able to say like, hey, we're going to incrementally improve this certain situation. Again, going back to the data, knowing what your starting point is, and then knowing how you're going to increase that and having kind of a stepwise plan for that is really important. And finding supporting data for your claims. So you can potentially look for studies out there, different economic reports on your area. Those are great for helping defend your point when you are looking to write a grant. It's just something to show that there is actually the need there, and that's something they do really like to see. Next, please. So having your ducks really important, especially with government grants, things like the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service. They're definitely more advanced and involved than some other smaller grants. So it's important to realize it's not, you know, it's not just free money. You have to definitely work for what you're doing, and you have to have a plan, and you also have to be a good steward of the financial backing that they're giving you. So they'll ask you for financial procedures and how you go about tracking everything, how you go about paying your people, that sort of thing. So it's good to consider, maybe talk to an accountant, a lawyer, something like that. So you just keep that in your mind. If you are going after these big grants, you'll want to have a plan for how you will handle the funds and keep track of everything. And it's also good to note that it can be a pretty time consuming thing. So when you're writing a grant, taking that into consideration is just the grant management portion of it. If you have to have funding for that in the grant, it's good to just know that off the bat. Also having a plan for cash flow management. A lot of grants can be reimbursement based. So the money will come out of your pocket and you will have to request reimbursement. It's important that the things you're spending money on are approved, because they won't approve things that, you know, they said were okay to begin with. So really important. And sometimes things can be changes in software or something. So potentially weeks where you won't get a reimbursement right away. So just things to be aware of, especially then things like the NRCS. There are some programs, I think, for beginning disadvantaged farmers where you can get some upfront, but it is also you complete the project and then they reimburse you for the cost of everything. So just have a plan for your cash flow, so you don't get in there and get super stressed. And then allowable versus non-allowable. When you're writing the grants, keep that in mind. They'll usually have a line of what you can and can't spend money on. So pay attention to that. You don't want to a grant that's asking for all this money for construction and they don't allow it. Like that's just gonna set you back to begin with. So just pay attention to that. And then as you're going through the grant, if you have to do any amendments, be aware that just have that on your radar, that what is and what isn't allowable. That's very important if you want to get paid. And tracking metrics of success, like we said, how are you going to measure success? How are you going to track them throughout? So one of us is our project reach. So one thing we do is measure our social media reach, and then also the people who come into our physical storefront. And that's something that's just built into our system already, where we can see how many people cashed out in a day or month or year. So that is, it makes it easier if you do something that's already built into your systems. Surveys too, if you plan to do, have very specific questions that you're trying to show as your metrics, make sure you're crafting your survey questions to get those answers you need, and think about how you're going to distribute them to get a good amount of answers back. Next, please. Your ducks in a row. So sticking to your financial plan, like I said, your management of your money, that document that they'll have you write at the beginning, that's super important. So you're following, like I said, they want a good financial steward. So it'll give you a lot less grief if you just make sure you're keeping your time in order. And then also keeping yourself on a regular schedule is very helpful. It can be stressful for both yourself and for your grant manager who's reviewing all your stuff. If you wait a whole year before sending something in, it's going to take a lot more time and you're more apt to make mistakes and forget things. So just keeping that regular schedule is helpful. And then keeping records of your work. So taking lots of photos and taking notes, and that makes your end of year reporting much simpler. So you don't have to go back and be like, oh man, what did I do? And did we actually do this? And how do we have proof that we did it? So it's really good to have that all keeping track of it throughout the year so that it makes life super easy at the end. And then, and tracking your metrics of success at set intervals. So we do our surveys once a year. And that just, we know we have it on our calendar when we need to have them. That's very helpful as well. Next, please. So we've had a handful of grants so far. Our big one right now is the local food promotion program. So that was expanding our aggregation and distribution capabilities, farmer outreach and education. So summits like this that we've been working on with NAU to help get people education on marketing and growing and all that good stuff. Also helping the producers that we work with help market their produce and goods throughout our region. And specifically not for was for production. So we were able to fund a wash pack where we were able to take goods and produce in from the farmers we work with and take our orders from our customers, pack them all up and distribute them from there. And it's been pretty great. So we've been making a lot of growth, and we're doing some now renovations at our shop downtown to help make that more efficient for getting food out to people. So we've been able to reach quite a few new communities in our area, being Mojave County is an extremely rural place, very spread out. So if anyone has questions specific to the LFPP, feel free to ask me about that. And then I know NRCS is a big one. The EQIP high tunnel one is big for food producers. So we're just starting our first one with that, and we are building those out right now. But that one is a reimbursement one, so you pay for it up front, and then once you're all done, they'll come and check it out. I think Rylan maybe can speak to this more. I'm not sure if you've gone through the whole process yet, but yeah. And so we've gotten a few others, and some that were private grants. We've gotten an American Express grant that was like very low key, from they just kind of give you funds and don't really follow up at all, to the LFPP, which is you're doing tons of documentation and really staying on things, and there's tons of procedure. So they can really span different levels of intensity. So keep that in mind, how much time you actually have to do this versus what you want to accomplish. So yeah, just know it is work to do these things as well. There's a lot of documentation and things to think through. So yeah, next please. And then yeah, keeping your momentum going. It may be difficult to get started, especially as you're a younger business and maybe you haven't gotten so many grants. It's hard. It's can be hard to kind of prove yourself at first, but as you work through it and get feedback on your grants, it becomes, what to start hitting on, and that becomes very helpful as you go. And keep track of your success as you go. It's always good to kind of have your resume as you're going through things and writing these grants. Like Darren said, they'll probably have you give your background a little bit. And then building relationships with your grant manager. They're there to help. It's always great to ask questions, so you know what you're supposed to be doing and not just guessing, because government things can be a little bit tricky with some of the wording they put things. So it's good to have an interpreter there for you. And then reaching out to consultants like Darren, who I've worked with for a few years now. They're great if you need help getting started. If you really want to do some things to get some funding but not sure where to start, they will be a good place, and they can help you write your grants and kind of figure out partnerships and a good angle to take. And yeah, relationships and partnerships are really essential. It's good to find your niche and be of service. It's a lot of these grants are looking for how you're promoting your community, not just your own business, like how you're bringing people together and progressing all of the food supply system. So yeah, so that's another thing to really consider as you're developing your strategy. Next, please. Yeah, there's my contact information if you guys have questions. May take me a minute or two to get back, but you can also reach me on Instagram too at Rosebird Farms.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.